Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. Over the past several months, it's been a nonstop stream of headlines coming out of Washington, D.C. But this next week, some folks from the land of agriculture are heading in to Washington, D.C. Joining us now is Brian Jennings, the CEO of the American Coalition for Ethanol. And Brian, I understand you're getting geared up for the fly-in coming next week. Is that right?
Yeah, Mike, we're really excited. We've done an annual fly-in ever since the Renewable Fuel Standard was enacted in Congress. So for a very long time now. Next week, we've got over 50 people from all around the country, from California to Virginia, from North Dakota to North Carolina, joining us on Capitol Hill in meetings with members of Congress and the Trump administration. We have over 100 meetings scheduled so far with members of Congress and a lot to talk about. So we're looking forward to it.
Now, I know that American Coalition for Ethanol has been a driving force behind E15 being available to drivers year-round. Will that be up for discussion this week?
Mike, it's our top priority. It might not surprise you. We came ever so close, of course, last year to finally getting that done in a year-end spending package. Recent spending package did not include it. And so the summer driving season is right around the corner. Legislation to permanently allow E15 year-round will be a top priority. We think it helps farmers in terms of boosting demand for corn. It helps consumers in terms of saving money at the pump. We're going to make a big push for it. All
right, so that's issue number one. Of course, we're also waiting on updated guidance on the Renewable Fuel Standard. Brian, what's ACE looking to see come out of that piece of legislation?
You know, I would say broadly, Mike, what we're really looking to do is make sure that the ethanol industry and agriculture is insulated from the potential of any retaliation or harm that may be done relative to trade. And so we've got to double down on increasing the use of homegrown biofuels here at home. That lends itself to E15 year-round, and it lends itself to the Renewable Fuel Standard. And specifically to your question, we're waiting on EPA to issue their proposed blending volumes for calendar years 2026 and 2027, perhaps for 2028. We have invited Administrator Zeldin of EPA to meet with us to talk about the need to increase these RFS blending targets, especially if we do lose any markets around the world in terms of trade wars. And so that's going to be really the second issue that we're pushing is increasing volumes under the Renewable Fuel Standard.
All right. Another topic we heard a lot about at the end of 2024 and hearing less from now, but it sounds like it will be in the news again, is the 45Z credit. What have we learned there, Brian? And what's your push on that this week?
Yeah, the Biden administration really left a lot of questions unanswered relative to the 45Z clean fuel production credit. So that is a big topic for us. It promotes innovation. It promotes good paying jobs. It promotes energy security. The USDA has put out some very beneficial rules on how agriculture practices could be monetized by farmers and biofuel producers through that 45Z clean fuel production credit. What we're waiting on is, will Congress keep that intact as they tackle reconciliation and tax issues? It's only a 3-year lifespan. We'd like to see 45Z move beyond 2027 in terms of an expiration date, Mike. And then we need the Treasury Department to put out the final rule so biofuel producers can understand how they might obtain that 45Z credit.
Lots to watch in this year ahead. Lots coming in the world of ethanol. Of course, ACE can be found online at ethanol.org. And Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Great to join you again. Thank you.
Our market segment this week is brought to you by Farm Futures. Keep up with all the important moves in the commodity markets at farmfutures.com. And this week, we're going to dig into the most incredible bull rally that's hit the cattle market, potentially in history, with Dennis Smith of Archer Financial. Dennis, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Thank you very much.
We have been talking, you and I, about the possibility of $200 fat cattle for about 4 years, Dennis. Now we're here. Where does this market go next? Where can we go from this point?
We're not real sure. One thing that I worry about is packer margins deeply in the red right now. They've got to find a way to make money moving forward. The other concern is the economy, and will the consumer continue to buy U.S. beef? Retail beef prices are record high. They've been record high for over 12 months. The Federal Reserve just hinted yesterday, this week that is, we're moving toward a possible stagflation, slowing economy, yet stubborn type inflation. So from a consumer standpoint, that's a real worry for me.
The idea being as beef prices stay sticky high, they could move to poultry or pork?
There's certainly alternatives available. As you just indicated, the pork market is really cheap right now. Poultry is always been a less expensive protein source.
All right, Dennis, now you mentioned that packer margin, that risk that could put out there for the cattle feeder. Had the chance to talk with a friend of mine in South Dakota, sold calves this week, nearly $2,500 a head for these 1,000-pound calves. That's an awful big cost for a feedlot to pay to get those calves in the gate. How are they managing those risks?
Yeah, feeder prices record high right now. Cow-calf guy doing very well right now. But the problem is moving forward, projected break-even costs on closeouts in the months ahead, 3, 4, 5 months down the road, they're going to be record high as well, and probably well north of $200. A lot of break-evens could be north of $205. Will the cash market be that high when it comes time to close out those animals?
Can you hedge a $205 finished animal anywhere today?
No, that's the problem. There is absolutely no hedge on the futures market, and there has not been one for several months now. So the futures market is sending a signal here to be very careful purchasing these feeders at record high prices.
Now, you mentioned the cow-calf guy seeing these huge returns as they're selling these calves off the cattle. Dennis, is this going to be enough to bring more cow-calf producers into the world of beef production, or do we still see that segment shrink?
We're still seeing the cow slaughter, the beef cow slaughter down so far this year. We're not seeing any indication of heifer retention, so no indications that we're ready to stabilize and start building this beef herd back up. Could be an indication with the dairy industry coming back into play here with the dairy beef cross. Maybe we're just going to produce less beef. Maybe we can produce more beef than expected because of the dairy industry.
Producing more beef than expected. Dennis, that's been kind of the theme for the last 6 months. We've had these dwindling cow numbers. We've had these dwindling cattle supplies. Beef production has stayed phenomenal. How high or how large can these carcasses get and still be processed?
Yeah, we're at record high weights right now, and I'm not sure how much more this can continue. I would be real concerned going into the summer months with so many heavyweight cattle on feed, vulnerable to a strange weather situation. I don't think it can continue on much further.
So how could producers manage some of that risk? Are you locking in feed costs for the remainder of the year right now to at least limit some upside danger?
Feed costs is something that has to be looked at very carefully, because if we would have a poor growing season this year and feed costs would spike higher, given the projected high break-evens on closeouts, and then you've increased your feed prices, could really lead to some problems moving forward. I think this is a year in which you've got to really look at locking in feed prices.
As you think about hedging, knowing that there's not a lot of opportunities for profitable hedging out there, is it still worth managing some risk out into the future using the board?
Yeah, you have to use put options or put spreads, in my opinion. We're trying to do that in the feeder cattle market and doing that a little bit in the live cattle market. Leave the upside open, hope that I'm completely wrong about worrying about consumer demand, and then see where this market goes.
Dennis Smith, you've given us a lot to think about in the cattle market with your time here on This Week in Agribusiness over the years. We've always appreciated it. And thank you so much for joining us now in this rarefied air of the cattle markets.
Thank you.
Farmers face a lot of challenges each year, and one of those, and a challenge that's growing, is resistant weeds. Well, at Commodity Classic in Denver recently, our own Max Armstrong had the chance to talk with Scott Kay at BASF about what he's watching as the new year gets started.
We're always hopeful going into the year, and think it's a good time for farmers to make sure they're reconsidering some of their decisions versus last year. What we saw last year is some farmers maybe stop with all of their decisions they had made. One example would be on fungicides. I think we heard stories about too hot, too dry. I'm not sure there's disease. And what we think happened this past year is that people lost yield. And I think in this environment, we all know that if you have depressed commodity prices, farmers mostly are trying now to look for yield or to build yield on their farm. We heard some cases yesterday from growers from Southwest Iowa. They said that some of their neighbors lost 40 bushels per acre by making one decision different than they did, and that was a fungicide at the end of the season.
It seems like every season has stress, and fungicides can really help level out some of that impact, can they not?
Yeah, they absolutely can. I think at BASF you will find that we believe we have performance-driven fungicides. So it's not just disease-based, but it'll help you with some of the climate, so drought tolerance, or help you with some of the lower moisture areas. We saw from our scientists that Veltima was building a bigger root mass. So just think about how that could help you late season to find moisture.
Somebody was talking with me the other day, and we were just comparing notes about companies in a downturn of the farm economy. How do you keep advancing? How do you make sure that the innovations are going to keep coming? You can't let your foot off the pedal, can you, Scott?
Not at all. And at BASF, in the next 5 years, we'll launch 20 new crop protection products. I don't know how many new seed varieties we'll launch, but it'll be quite a few. Zotavo, we have our own genetics now. In 2 years, we'll have our own SCN trait, Nerisma. So we know SCN is one of the biggest yield robbers, and we can't wait for farmers to see it in their fields. And that's the other thing. So by 2030, that same 5 years, our total pipeline of innovation value is worth $2.5 billion. And so BASF's highly committed. We're some $3 million every day you wake up, Max. BASF is investing in research and development. And so we know farmers need that innovation now. The panel yesterday that we had said that water hemp was their #1 concern. How many treatments do you suppose that group of farmers said they were having to go to get that weed under control? 2 to 3, with a residual in each pass.
Thanks to Scott Kay from BASF for filling us in there. It will be interesting to see what that pipeline of innovation is able to bring out for the farmers of the future.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Greg Solier has been keeping an eye on the active spring weather across the country. And Greg, what do you expect to see in the Pacific Northwest next week?
A little bit of a lull early in the week, and it's been that part of the country where weather systems have been dropping into what we call the long wave trough position. There you sound pretty cool at the coffee shop. That would be over this particular part of the country, but more of an onshore flow, and it is a warmer flow, and opportunities to get out there and assess the back 40 coming off the winter precipitation season, which has been pretty substantial for the northern Sierra and the Cascades and the northern Rockies. A different story down south, and we have almost some sign of the early summertime warm ridge establishing itself. Remember, that was a trip off. We talked about that in the Spring Outlook, organizing over the Eastern Pacific, and it is on the move along with this weather system out of Big Sky Country into the northern plains. High pressure otherwise in control. That brief break in the storminess is relatively short-lived. Another significant upper air trough moving ashore into northern California and the Pacific Northwest with a fair amount of wind. I got a little system down here across Yellowstone and moving into the plains, so there's another round of moisture, but likely confined from about the divide on westward later on into the week. Quiet high pressure and maybe a little subtle onshore or offshore flow, Santa Ana conditions into Southern California. Very weak benign weather system into areas of New Mexico and Texas, and boy, it has just blown like an inland hurricane down there the past couple of weeks. 2 major dust storms out of New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas with some of these 80 and 90 mile per hour winds. So nice to see some clouds and a couple of sprinkles, maybe perhaps into some of those dry West Texas fields as well. Later in the week, the northern extension of that system begins to build into northern California. Maybe a little bit of rain there, a couple of showers into the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma Panhandle country. Otherwise, quiet weather pattern and seasonal warmth in the desert Southwest.
I know last week brought some moisture to the central part of the U.S. Greg, any chance for more of that in this upcoming week?
Boy, you go from, like, I saw this on the maps and charts middle part of last week at Omaha. You went within a half-hour drive north and northwest, you were in a blizzard. You went east and southeast, you were into heavier showers and thunderstorms. Same thing, I'm sure, applied to Iowa and Illinois and Indiana and Ohio. Much of the central and southern Corn Belt, again, beat up. One day it was springtime with severe weather, the next day, wintertime. And another system exiting out with a gusty wind pattern as well, with a mix of rain and snow across the Great Lakes and eastern Corn Belt. We do anticipate, as the week wears on, a drier northwest to southeast wind flow, opportunities to assess maybe some muddy grounds, move livestock around coming off the blizzard across the plains, and for the most part enjoy a much quieter weather picture, although a downward trend on temperatures certainly noted. Cooler, drier weather for the southern plains, the last of showers and thunderstorms in the waterlogged areas of Kentucky, Tennessee, and the Delta region. Later on into the week, a little system across parts of the plain states, high plains areas of Oklahoma and Texas. A couple of showers and thunderstorms here. Much needed dry time in the Tennessee Valley. Warm, dry weather continuing on in the southwest.
What are you seeing as you look all the way to the East Coast, Greg?
That last of these, really a brigade of spring storms, just big winder uppers, wind storms, way to look at it. One day it's spring, the next day it's wintertime. Well, that's moving out into the northeast to New England. Organized snows again for southeastern Canada. Gusty winds and a few sprinkles and snowflakes into the eastern and southern Corn Belt as colder, drier, more settled and stable air moves in from northwest to southeast. A little bit of a frontal boundary into the northern lakes region. This one widening out of the eastern states as well, but at least a break in the overall wet weather pattern and stormy weather pattern that has beat up a good part of the plains and Corn Belt here the past couple of weeks. The last of this weather system and more severe weather as well, this time along the Gulf Coast into the Delta, moving through the southeastern states with showers and thunderstorms. Well, I tell you, in one end of the spectrum, too wet here across the Tennessee Valley, mid-south. Fires again into parts of the eastern Carolinas and from Orlando down into the Everglades area. Fires, too. That's how dry it is. About 90 to 95% of the soils are dried out across much of Florida. In any event, the system moves off to the east and northeast. Couple of showers and thunderstorms down through Florida. Cooler, drier weather for outdoor work and maybe some harvest, I should say outdoor work from a planting standpoint in this particular part of the country. Meanwhile, opportunities for outdoor work as well continue on in the wetter areas of the lower Mississippi Valley back into the southern plains states, too.
Closed captioning this week is brought to you by Farm Progress. Their team of experts reports on innovative solutions and essential information for your farm business. Visit farmprogress.com to stay updated. This past week, our industry celebrated National Ag Week, and on Friday, we celebrated female leaders in the industry with the National Women in Ag Day celebration. This week, we're going to talk to 3 of those leaders across the ag industry. Joining us first is Kate Greif. She serves as a marketing manager for BASF. And Kate, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Good morning. Thank you for the time today.
Tell us, if you would, about your current role. What are you doing day to day with BASF?
So with BASF, I am a senior marketing manager working really on our strategy across the U.S. business. So what does that mean for me day in, day out? I spend a lot of time working with our internal teams and with our sales teams, and even with customers, talking about not only the products that BASF brings to the farm today, but all of the innovations that we're bringing in the future and how that's going to help make a difference in the agronomic performance of the retail industry as well as at the farm at a local level.
And I know you've been in that role for a while. Kate, do you believe that being a woman in your industry gives you some special insights into best approaching this role?
I think the fact of being a woman in this industry, it really helps to continue to create a culture that embraces diversity in thought and in backgrounds and ways of thinking and the way that we approach problems. I think it's interesting on the team that I'm on today. I am one of the few that are from a family farm. So my thought background is actually from the industry in a family farming capacity. And so it really brings that culture of inclusivity and just bringing different ways of thinking. And it's not necessarily just about being a woman, but also bringing those different perspectives, those different backgrounds to bring better solutions to the industry long term.
That's a great point. Different mindsets can bring new ideas. Kate, thank you so much for telling us about your role at BASF.
Absolutely.
Next up, we're meeting Felicia Nicholson. She serves as the head of Academy for Claas. And Felicia, thanks for talking with us this week.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Head of Academy. What does that role do at Claas?
My role at Claas is to enable farmers to be the best in their field. And what does that mean for me in my role? That means that I get to work with our dealership network and ensure they have all the skills that they need to take care of our customers.
Now, what does that mean to be a female leader in your industry, working with dealers, working with heavy machinery? What's that like, Felicia?
Well, when I think about leadership, to me, I think about flexibility, right? Being able to pivot, to adapt to change, and to understand that not every situation can be approached the same way. And some of the traits that women naturally lead with, right? Compassion, empathy, the ability to connect with others. I think those are really incredibly powerful tools.
Now, did you grow up in the world of agriculture, or was there a learning curve?
So I'm born and raised in Nebraska. I grew up around ag. I was involved in 4-H and FFA from a young age. And 4 years ago, when I joined the ag industry, I thought, wow, I've got this down. And boy, was I surprised to learn just how complicated and how complex the industry really is.
It does continue to keep changing. And Felicia, as you look out to the future, what advice would you give for women looking to pursue a career in agriculture?
For women looking to pursue a career in agriculture, I would say jump right in. Women in ag are becoming more visible. There are additional opportunities as we move towards agri-science, and lots of opportunities for women to step into this industry that maybe weren't there 5 or 10 years ago.
Jump right in. That is a great welcome from Felicia Nicholson at Claas. Thank you so much, Felicia, for filling us in on what your day-to-day role is like at Claas.
Thanks for having me.
Felicia mentioned the agri-sciences as a path forward in agriculture, and our next guest went that route. Dr. Ann Runkle joins us now. She is the Vice President of Research and Development at Mosaic Biosciences. Ann, that's a big title. What's your day-to-day role look like at Mosaic?
At Mosaic, we help the world grow the food it needs, and I lead the product innovation team, developing new technologies that help improve crop nutrition. And this means developing technologies that innovate the fertilizer and biological technologies for Mosaic.
Was that a passion of yours from the start, or was that something you grew into?
It's been a passion of mine since I joined industry.
Wow. And so how long have you been working in the world of agriculture now?
A little over 8 years, and focused around solving a key problem around crop nutrition, which is that much of the nutrition that's put out into a field is not taken up by the plant within the same season. And biologicals can help to address that issue.
Okay, so we're seeing more utilization of science to better increase those results on the field. And are you seeing more women involved in the kind of work you're doing in the world of agriculture?
Absolutely. There are more and more women interested in coming into the sciences, and I think you see that very much in the early stages of career development for women. An area that we need to work harder on is getting women in leadership positions.
So what would you say to those young women who are coming up now? What would you say to encourage them to strive for leadership roles, Ann?
Be brave, be tenacious, and be curious. Opportunities are not always straightforward or look like beautiful packages tied up with a bow. They're often really challenging and need your input to make them happen and be successful.
You know, I've heard that people often miss opportunity because it shows up looking like work, not like an opportunity. It sounds like you need to grab those opportunities to work. Is that right?
You got it.
Fantastic. Dr. Ann Runkle, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. And any further advice for young women, especially looking to get into agriculture?
I would also recommend getting out there, getting into the field, and meeting as many people as you can in the industry. It's a beautiful industry, it's a complex industry, and one that requires a lot of investment to learn it and understand it.
It sure does. Dr. Ann Runkle, thank you so much for speaking with us this week.
Thank you.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. It's no surprise that agriculture is a diverse industry, and there are many, many paths to success within our business. This week, we're talking with Kayleen Ballesteros. She serves as the go-to-market manager for hay and forage products at John Deere. And Kayleen, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about your current position. What does the go-to-market manager for hay and forage products do at John Deere?
Yeah, so go-to-market manager for hay and forage products, really a big portion of my role is to work with our dealers in making sure they are prepared to launch new products and sell current products. And so what does that really mean? It's making sure that they have the training they need, the marketing, advertising, any sort of tool that they would use to support their sales. That is something we focus on, and making sure they have what they need.
And you have been with John Deere 13 years, getting the skills necessary to do this job, but I understand your history with agriculture goes back even deeper than that. Kayleen, can you fill us in? What is your background in the industry?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a different, maybe a non-traditional background. So I grew up on a small cow-calf operation, but also we have a horse operation, and that is both of those the family business. And so my mom's side of the family really is in more of the horse showing space. And so we would have anywhere up to 50 to 100 head of horses at a time. It was the breeding, the showing, on a good day, right, the selling of these horses to wonderful homes. And so really focusing on the genetics and the breeding on both sides of that. And that is what brought me into really this world in general, in the John Deere work world.
Do you have any advice for other women in agriculture looking at the future of their career?
Yeah, a few different things. I think for one, it can seem overwhelming and intimidating. That's what it felt like for me. So my husband, he loves what I do. He humors what I do, but he did not grow up in this type of in agriculture world. So really it was for me understanding I can do this at a small scale and grow. I can do it myself with the support of my family, and you just have to try it. Also, as specifically as a woman, it can be challenging. There's things that come up that makes you feel like, am I worthy? Can I do this compared to others? The biggest advice I can give is understand, but move forward. Don't get stuck in the stickiness of it. Just keep moving forward, keep your sights on what you want to do, and it'll happen.
That's Kayleen Ballesteros, go-to-market manager for hay and forage products with John Deere. Thanks for taking the time this week.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg mentioned next week's precipitation outlook. And Greg, remind us, who's going to see what next week?
A big change on that precipitation chart because there ain't much to speak of for a change. Good news in the context that we won't have to deal with these windstorms that have been blowing out of the high plains across the Corn Belt into the eastern states. But at the same time, remember, drought-ridden and worsening across the southern plains and southwestern parts of the country. In any event, early in the week, some showers and thunderstorms in the southeastern part of the country. We do need dry time in the wetter areas of the mid-south, little or none to speak of across much of the northern and western Corn Belt Plain States areas. As the week wears on, a significant plume of moisture into the northern and central Rockies, back into the far northern Sierra and the Cascades. Little, if anything, going on. I think the moisture season, Mike, is pretty much over with in the southwestern reaches of the country.
Well, let's talk temperatures. We get into the spring season. Greg, what are you seeing as April gets started?
Yeah, we've officially rolled into it. And last week, I think it was the day before when we had summer-like, spring-like warmth, severe weather, and then it snowed in the same spots within about a 24-hour time frame. But here it is, a push of some progressively cooler, colder air, late season cold, and there's a lot of snow cover. If you can see a snow cover map or chart, it is just bountiful across the Canadian prairie, little to none otherwise across the continental United States, and warmth needed for those soils across the deep south over the southwestern reaches of the country as well. And the weather systems are coming into play. Not much to speak of. Get used to this shading here. Below average moisture continues to come down nicely Pacific Northwest, northern plains, northern through eastern Corn Belt, and the area of severe weather in this particular corridor into the northeast to New England. At least we're trying to get back to normal precip, Mike, over some of the drought areas of the southeast.
How about the week of April 7th? Greg, what do you see temperature-wise?
We're getting ramped up with field work as well, and a pretty comfortable go of it. We'll get some warmth as far north as the eastern Corn Belt, maybe a little snow melt into the St. Lawrence River Valley on northward. Warmth over the southeastern part of the country. Still got the trough in the middle part of the country, a little lobe of cooler air into the Pacific Northwest and northern California. So the storm track plays out like this. A little separation maybe in these storms that'll be coming out of the southern plains up through the Ohio, the usual corridor this time of the year for severe weather. Moisture over much of the eastern Corn Belt, southeastern states. This hopefully will be good news in this particular part of the country. Little to none southwest, and the moisture continues on in the Pacific Northwest.
Do things change at all as we get towards the end of April, the week of the 14th?
If you're looking for springtime, look elsewhere. The trough deepens. The cold air is certainly dominant for the time of the year into the Canadian prairie. That's a cold wave weather pattern. Eastern states is warm, and you hate to see this from a storm standpoint. Plenty of them from the southern plains and across the Corn Belt. Late season snows up to the north. More moisture too, but drought relief for parts of the northern and central plains.
Our Farm Progress Update is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of high-quality, high-capacity field grain belts and augers. Visit brandt.ca for more. Well, a new year presents a new opportunity for farmers to mix up their management techniques. And one thing that's been growing a lot in popularity is intercropping, planting 2 or more crops in the same field at the same time. American Agriculturist editor Chris Torres recently had the chance to dig into intercropping on the East Coast, and he's going to join us now. Chris, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Mike.
Fill us in. You recently discussed intercropping on the Delmarva Peninsula. What did you learn? What are farmers trying to do out there?
Well, it's all about, farmers trying to do something different. They're experimenting with things. In a couple cases here, we've had farmers actually try the whole corn and soybean intercropping system. And the whole idea behind that, if the viewers don't know, the whole idea behind that is essentially it's pretty simple, is to get more sunlight to the corn. That results in higher corn yields. But I think a lot of growers on Delmarva are finding, though, that it results in much lower soybean yields for many, many reasons, and that's been a struggle down here.
So really, the gist is they're planting corn rows very, very wide with soybeans in between. Am I painting an accurate picture?
You are painting an accurate picture, yes. It really depends on the farm. Some farms go a little more narrow, some farms go a little more wide. So it really depends, a lot of, the great thing about here on Delmarva, we've had some growers actually experiment with this for several years. And, they're tinkering a little bit, trying the more narrow rows. Some are trying the more wide rows, just tinkering it to try to make it work. In most cases, I think a lot of farmers have struggled with it. There's many reasons for that. One reason is deer. The deer really like that straight and narrow path to be able to get to the soybeans, and this creates just a great runway for the deer. Another reason that farmers have really struggled with it is herbicides. There's a lot of issues down here on Delmarva with Palmer and other issues. So, herbicide rotation is very, very important in those systems. So when you're doing the corn and soybean intercropping, that tends to put a wrench in those plans. But, there is no doubt that the corn yields go up. In fact, on one farm, he actually saw, this one farmer that I know of normally gets between 250 and 300 bushels of corn. He's actually seen corn yields actually go up to 400 bushels of corn in this corn intercropping system. Wow. But at the same time, he's seen his soybean yields tumble down to 20 bushels an acre one year. So it really depends. I mean, it really depends on and a lot of it has to do with pricing, right? I mean, it really does have to do with pricing, has to do with input costs and all that sort of thing. And really depends on the grower. And, some growers really like it. Some growers are just like, I don't know if it's for me. So it really depends.
That's a great point. And folks, if they're interested, they can read your full write-up of the tales of intercropping on the Delmarva Peninsula in American Agriculturist. Yep. That one was about a week and a half ago. That story came out. Fantastic read. And of course, Chris, you'll have more coming from American Agriculturist as we get closer to planting, right?
Absolutely. We're wishing for some rain out here. It's a little dry. We just had a little bit of snow. It hasn't been that much, but we definitely do need some rain.
That's true for nearly everybody across the country. Chris Torres, editor of American Agriculturist, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you, Mike.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. Once again this weekend, I share with you a tractor that's a little bit different, pretty unusual. Not as unusual maybe as the Uncle Sam that we shared with you last weekend, but this one is special in its own way for a farmer in southeast Iowa. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Lundell Plastics. I've shared with you many times those stories of small town businesses serving American farmers. Vance Lundell's business at Odebold, Iowa is one of those. Check out his product line, producers, that can help you on your farm. LundellPlastics.com. Well, Mel Sanders in the southeast part of Iowa has a tractor that he's pretty fond of. He drove an IH 1026 Hydro as a young man, but he didn't drive one like this. Let's take a look at it. Mel Sanders grows corn and soybeans there in southeast Iowa, not far from Fort Madison and Keokuk, and he has only one antique tractor. This is it, a 1026 Hydro, but a 1026 Hydro with factory front-wheel drive. Mel says there were only 29 of those made. He thinks it might have had a loader on it at one time because it has some extra hydraulics on it under the seat. Tested out at 115 horsepower on the dyno. That's above its rating of 112 horsepower. One that Mel Sanders is very proud of at Donaldson, Iowa. Now let's go to Mark Stock, our friend who reports in each weekend from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. The frost is out of the ground in most of the country, and work is being done not only in the fields but on some construction sites across the Midwest, and we have a huge construction equipment auction on March the 25th with late model case, cat, and deer equipment. Items located in Huntington, Indiana, Hamilton, Illinois, Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, South Dakota. On Wednesday, March the 26th, over 1,200 items sell. Sellers include 3B Farms and L Equipment LLC out of Dalhart, Texas. Ben and Nancy Unick, they are retiring from Pleasanton, Nebraska. Buck Farms Retirement, Keys, Oklahoma. Coberly Farms will have their sale by Gove, Kansas. Corwin and Roxanne Horst, their retirement sale by Plainview, Nebraska. Erickson Ag, LLC in Platte, South Dakota. Mike Foltz from Humphrey, Nebraska. And Thursday, Max, Belltown Farms in Holstein, Nebraska will have their sale. Jerry and Art Bina, they are retiring from Soresco, Iowa. And Friday, March the 28th, Tomco Farms retirement sale in Jacksonville, Illinois will round out next week's auctions on BigIron.com. Thank you.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Geringoff. Check out the new XFR50 Draper with 3 times more flexibility than the closest competitor at Geringoff.com. Geringoff, proudly built in the American heartland. And this week, we're getting to know Windsor Leidy. She serves as president of the Colorado State FFA. And Windsor, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Of course, happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your background. What was it that made you get into FFA in the first place?
Yeah, so I come from a super small rural Colorado town, and it's kind of just a thing that everyone's in. Something that we've learned to appreciate as we've grown up. My whole family has been an FFA. My brother has been a state officer. My mother has been a state officer. But I was pulled into it by them and by our community and learned to appreciate it. But I stayed in it because I found my own community through FFA, and it really just opened up a whole new world for me.
Well, so let's talk about that world that it opened up. You served, and how long did it take you to want to serve in leadership at FFA?
Yeah, so I really love how my school does things. We really believe in working your way up that ladder and earning your position. And so we have a junior officer team and a senior officer team at McClave. So I started on that junior officer team straight out of my freshman year. And my sophomore year, I got the opportunity to serve on the senior officer team. And I was in leadership roles all 4 years of high school. I'd been raised that way. I'd played sports. And so it really wasn't anything new. It's something that I always knew that I wanted to do, and really just active service.
Absolutely. What have been the highlights as serving as president of the FFA in Colorado?
Oh, it's been amazing. There have been so many. We get to live in Denver, and I'd really say that's the biggest opportunity, and it is just so fun all the time. I mean, when else do you get to live with 9 other teenagers in the middle of a big city? It's very, very different for a small town girl and from where I come from. Something a little bit more smaller that I had gotten the opportunity to do this year and that I really enjoyed was going out to Washington, D.C. again for State Officer Summit. We got to meet with all the other state officers from all of the other different states and talk with our senators and talk the Farm Bill. It was just really great networking and such a great experience being in our nation's capital.
That's what it's all about. Growing the industry starts in high school. Windsor Lighty, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Of course. Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by AGI, supporting your expertise with industry-leading grain handling, storage, conditioning, and monitoring solutions. AGI, we're right there with you. Did your vehicle not start on a cold morning this winter? Well, Chad Colby's got a solution.
We've all needed to use a set of jumper cables. Sometimes maybe it's not the most convenient time. And recently, I actually ran the battery down in my vehicle and a friend of mine showed me his new NOCO Boost. And I can tell you this, there's some new technology in jump starter packs. That's kind of what I've called them over the years. In the past, they were always big and bulky, and as you can see, this is very small and compact. I got this from Amazon for $200. Of course, it'll charge other devices, maybe an air inflator, or maybe your cell phone or something like that. This one's rated for pretty large engines, 8-liter gas engine or a 6-liter diesel. If you go out to their website, they make these in really large sizes that could even handle marine applications, or maybe if you got a bulldozer on the farm, or certainly any big engines. They even claim up to some 16-liter stuff. So they have a lot of different versions of this. Now, as you see me hooking up the leads here, I want to talk about some of the technology. They have something called spark proof, and basically there's reverse polarity protection. So if you hook the leads on the wrong side, it's not going to spark. It's going to tell you that, hey, listen, that's wrong. Now you can see here I have it hooked correctly. I turn it on, everything's green, and then you'll see it. The little indicator light will click to white. And when it does, then you get in the vehicle and it runs through its sequence. Essentially, you have 60 seconds to start your vehicle. If not, you turn the unit back off and start the sequence up again. Super handy, super compact. I really like it. Now, there's some other things this battery pack's going to do, and I think that's just some of the obvious. It's got USB built in and 12 volt, so if you want to use a cigarette lighter or you want to charge something else, a smartphone or a camera, computer, or all that kind of stuff, and get this, it charges with USB of all things. So you plug it in. I plugged it in overnight, and it was charged up in the morning, which is pretty cool. Go out to their website. You can learn more about this technology. It's really fascinating. It's got an integrated light, and I saw on their website they also have one with an air compressor in it. The most important thing, I guess, in my opinion, is make sure you get the right size. They got a lot of different applications. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. We'll be back with more after this. Agriculture's advancements now include the use of nanoparticles. I had the chance to talk with Art Graves of Vive Crop Science about what they're doing with their new Averland FC.
Ahead for Averland in 2026, we expect to get EPA approval so that we can launch in soybeans and take advantage of that success we've had in corn and cotton. We've seen some nice yield bumps in corn, controlling nematodes, creating awareness for farmers on nematodes, and looking to take advantage of that in soybeans as well.
As you think about nematodes broadly, we talk about them a lot in the world of soybeans. How is Averland FC going to help those soybean producers manage those risks?
So we're going to control the soybean cyst nematode, which is a major pest. Even though there are resistant traits for soybean cyst nematode, we're going to give it extra control above and beyond that for the cyst, but we're also going to bring control of those secondary nematodes, the lesions, the stems, and the dagger nematodes.
And all of that's ahead, we're hoping in 2026.
In 2026, pending approval.
Pending approval. In the meantime, of course, you still have a great lineup of products for corn growers in particular. Let's talk about Asteroid, if you could. Art, fill us in.
Asteroid is our keystone product, Vive Crop Protection. It's our first product we launched in 2017. It's a great in-furrow fungicide to give you longer protection than your seed treatments. Seed treatments last about 21, 28 days, and Asteroid gives you great compatibility with liquid fertilizer and extends that protection out about 50 to 60 days just before you're getting ready to do that at-tassel application.
Art, when you're talking about compatibility with liquid fertilizer and what the Vive crop protection nanoparticles do for the product, can you give us an example as to how it changes the makeup of the product?
Sure, those nanoparticles you just mentioned give us the ability to coat the active ingredient in a way that makes it compatible with water and liquid fertilizers, and also micronutrients and other pesticides. So you can feel like mixing Vive crop protection products with almost anything. Here's an example we have here. We have the Vive formulation of Bifender and Asteroid compared to an industry standard, and you can see those nanoparticles give you great seamless mixing in the fertilizer where others will clump, clog screens, slow you down during planting season, and that's never good.
No. You mentioned that Bifender. Can you tell us a little bit about how that's helping corn producers?
Sure. Bifender is another one of those products that goes in furrow, very liquid fertilizer compatible, gives you great control of corn rootworm, but also controls some of the secondary pests that most people aren't thinking about, grubs and wireworms, and again, extending that seed treatment control well past the 21 to 28 days.
Art, if we've got viewers who want to learn more about Vive crop protection, where would you send them?
Well, they can always go to our website, vivecrop.com. They can find one of our reps nationwide, or they can check out our YouTube channel.
Thank you, Art, for that update. And thank you for joining us here today. Be sure to catch us next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness. Take care, everyone. This Week in Agribusiness is recorded in the Strauss Studios. For more than 70 years and 3 generations, Strauss has been manufacturing high-performance German-engineered workwear, work boots, and safety equipment. Prepare for the next growing season at Strauss.com.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.